Yeah, and I think there's also it's if you're going to suppress and shut your system down, there's an element of right. If I'm taking that risk,
Yeah.
then I want a reasonable reward for that risk. So I think there's a difference between where I would be on a first cycle for maximizing progress against the risks that you're taking with shutdown and everything else, against what would be the lowest dose I think you could run in that first cycle that would actually gain you some decent results.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally, and all of our programming is brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. If you're in the UK and you're on gear, you're going to need to get your labs done, and you can get your labs done by Dave. So go to evalbloodanalysis.com to get your labs done today. We are brought to you by Strom Sports Nutrition. For those of you in the UK, they have great health stacks, including like some serious cycle support that you're going to need if you're on cycle. They may be coming to the US soon, too, it sounds like. We're also brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there. I just bought some cookie butter protein. I bought a pound of it to try. I think it's going to be my new favorite flavor. Use our code THINK over at True Nutrition to get additional savings on all your supplements, all your basic sups that you need, your protein powder, Cre-a-TIN, your intra, everything else. And we are brought to you by supplementsource.ca, guys. They have great deals for Canadians that change week to week. So if you're in Canada, shop with Supplement Source. Save a couple bucks because Lord knows bodybuilding is expensive. Dave, nice flannel shirt, first of all. You just gave me crap. Every episode I wear a flannel shirt. Every episode.
Your colors are shit.
Oh, but so you can wear a flannel shirt whenever you want, is what you're telling me. And the minute I do, it's like, oh, Scott's wearing a flannel. Oh.
Yeah, but hang on a minute. Your flannel shirt is 7 shades of shit. It's
orange.
Every color of brown.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have another one that's like blue and gray. So
yeah, but this is more fashionable.
Oh, okay. Fashion advice with Dave. That's the episode today. Great.
Oh, that's really scraping the barrel.
We're trying to get a lot of views on this one.
3.
We have a great topic today, and this kind of comes to us from our last episode. So last week we were talking about cheap cycles basically, and what it came down to is that if you're taking a really strong compound, you don't need a lot of it. So if you wanted to run a low dose cycle and get the best effects that you possibly can, then a little bit of Tren is going to go a long way compared to the amount of Primo you would have to buy to get the same effect from it. Now, here's a topic that came up though. So one of our listeners said, yeah, but there's also a minimal effective dose, that sometimes it's just not even worth the time, the energy, the money to get involved with a compound if you're not going to take enough of it to actually grow. And he does have a valuable point. So we're going to talk about the minimal effective doses of all your standard main compounds. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think too. I know a lot of you guys have experimented with lower doses. So tell us, what are the minimal effective doses that have been good for you? But before we get into it, I think we should define, when we say minimal effective, what do we mean by effective? Are we talking about because I think there's a big difference between taking enough to get a pump in the gym and feeling a little bit stronger and actually feeling it in your system versus actually growing new muscle tissue. Those are two different things, you know what I mean?
Yes, I agree. Completely.
So I guess effective dose is actually making new muscle gains, or for those of you out there who are easily triggered, new tissue. For those of you who want to grow new tissue, there for some reason that's a hot button word right now. People don't like the word tissue. I don't know.
Why?
Don't ask me. I don't know, dude. I think because maybe muscle is very little of it is tissue. What are we, 90% water? I think that it's 87% fluid. There's a lot goes into muscle. There's not only the tissue of the muscle itself. There's the vascularity that goes along with it. There's a lot. You know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway,
I think I'm 95% water.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. If we just slimmed you down, we did a little cut, you would be ready, stage ready. I think.
Yeah, there'd be not left of me. Get the water out of me, there'd be nothing left of it.
So anyway, I guess that's how we're defining it, is enough of a compound to actually grow new tissue. Okay. Let's start with, where do we want to start? Tren, the big boy.
I would say 100.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think 100 is...
Yeah, female, I think you could probably be as low as 10, 15.
Yeah. Yeah, I may or may not be starting an experiment of my own with a low-dose Tren, because it might be all I have that's actually worth taking. I thought I had
I love your cycle planning. Let's open the box and see what we've got.
So I thought I had enough EQ. It was a foolish mistake. I only had one bottle that I purchased, and I don't plan on getting any more. I'm like, but I got a vial and a half of Tren that'll last me a long time at 100, 150 a week.
It's like some weird cook show where, they get a box of ingredients and have to try and make something out of it.
Yeah, that's kind of it. Yeah, here's like some Fritos and some marmalade. Go. So anyway, I'm with you. I think 100, 150 maybe, somewhere in there on Tren. All right, so if we're going from Tren, then let's go to its counterpart, as I'll call it, the other 19 nor that is so popular, Nandrolone. I've got a number in my head. I'm curious to see if Dave agrees. I'm going to say...
I'm bouncing between 2 and 3. So, yeah, somewhere in that ballpark figure, yeah.
I was going to say like 250 maybe, Yeah. So, 2 to 3, 2 to 300 on Deca. Now, would that be the same on Nandrolone phenylpropionate versus long-acting Deca?
So... Now, so if we say, let's go with 250 then, we'll go down the middle. So 250 Deca. The difference is going to be that obviously over the first 4, 5, 6 weeks, that circulating level is going to increase until it plateaus. So the sum of parts is going to be greater than the individual dosing.
Yeah.
With the NPP, I think you're going to be around the 50 mark, but you're not going to probably see the same extent of blood plasma peak with the NPP. I think it will be lower, but it's going to be higher initially. So whereas the standard Deca is going to go up sort of like that, the NPP is going to start a little bit higher, but it's not going to grow as much. But I think 50 is probably where you're going to be with the NPP.
Wait, 50?
Yeah, 50, 75.
You're thinking that you could grow from 50 milligrams a week of NPP?
No, sorry. Per dosing, 3 doses a week. I apologize. 150.
Oh, so 150.
Yeah, I'm talking as a dose. Sorry. So
I got you. 3 times a week?
Yeah, so 3 times a week, 50 milligrams.
Okay, so 150 NPP versus Deca at
250.
250. I would stick with the 200 maybe personally, but this isn't scientific. You know what I mean? If you guys tuned in to have us break out the charts and graphs, you tuned into the wrong show. That said, if you do enjoy our show, then we would definitely appreciate hitting the like button. It really does make a difference. And leave us comments and leave us questions for the next show. And if you aren't subscribed, then you definitely should subscribe and hit the bell. What's next? Where do you want to go to next from here? We covered kind of the Nandrolones. Maybe we should have started with Test, the foundational compound, right? The parent of all of these drugs.
I think we're circa Deca, maybe a little bit higher. So if we're going to say 200 on Deca, I think we're going to say 250, 300 on Test.
Yep, I'm with you 100%. I mean, I guess this kind of does matter too. Where are you coming from?
Yeah, and I think there's also it's if you're going to suppress and shut your system down, there's an element of if I'm taking that risk,
yeah,
then I want a reasonable reward for that risk, and So, I mean, we normally sort of say first cycle's 3, 4, 500 tests a week, test only, just so we don't get any complications with interactions and different side effects. But, so I think there's a difference between where I would be on a first cycle for maximizing progress against the risks that you're taking with shutdown and everything else, against what would be the lowest dose I think you could run in that first cycle that would actually gain you some decent results. So for me, I think with 250, 300 for the minimum we can run and get some reasonable results. But if I were advising on that cycle, I'd be saying, well, I would aim for 400 as a risk to reward ratio in what you're doing, shutting yourself down, and what you're going to get in results. But this is a slightly different conversation because this is about how low can you go and still get something.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would prefer 400 over, say, 300 for growth. I think the risk to reward is pretty similar. You know what I mean? Or the risk of 400 versus 300. Heck, man, I'd even go to say the risk of 300 to 500 isn't really that much different. You'll be more likely to have to do something to control estrogen the higher that dose gets. But as far as like looking at your lab work goes after the cycle, the amount of shutdown that you get from 300 and damage to your body, I don't think it's going to be that much different, 300 to 500. I don't know. What do you think?
Again, this then comes. I think the nuances there on the individual and where they are with their training and diet and stuff like that. Someone who, let's say someone's trained for 10 years, been a natural, very invested in their diet and training, then I think that 200 milligram difference can be quite significant in the results they get. But your average gym rat who sort of follows his diet and may get a couple of decent sessions in a week, the rest are just okay, there's probably not going to be a significant change between those dosings.
Yeah, okay. I could see that. I think most of my experience is based off of people that I've worked with, and generally, if they're hiring me, they're pretty, they're plugged in. They want to follow a good diet. They've gone out to hire somebody to do that. You know what I mean? So I know there are guys out there that are just kind of like banging gear and still partying on the weekends, and I know those guys exist. But I don't see their results. You know what I mean? Because they're not working with me.
The biggest problem I see with most people, the biggest single factor that impacts their progress is their training.
Yeah.
And it's not, you can easily get elitist around training, and it's not that some people just don't have the physical or mental capacity to train at a certain level of intensity where others do.
Sure.
You take someone like Dorian, and there's very few people on the planet can replicate that level of intensity. He was unique in that factor. And so, for me, the biggest stumbling block or the biggest differential between people's progress is usually down to their training around genetics, and not just their muscle response, but their mental fortitude around their training around genetics, or genetics around training, should I say. So, I think there can be a variance if the training is really dialed up. And that's usually the area that people struggle with because everybody perceives themselves as training hard. Yeah.
And it's not only training hard, but it's doing it workout after workout repeatedly for years. And thinking of this reminds me, I remember a long time ago when Fuad first started podcasting, he mentioned this in a video where he said, like, if you want to come and train with me and you come out to work out with me, I'm a pro, and let's say that you get all hyped up for it, you take a bunch of pre-workout, you make sure that all your nutrition was nailed because you're going to train with this pro bodybuilder, then you can probably keep up with me. But the challenge is not just that one workout and keeping up with me. Then it's doing it the next day and the next day and for the next 10 years. Every time you train, I agree with you. It is a lot. Not everybody is capable of that, especially out the gate. The longer we do it, the better we get at it.
The other problem is it's not very quantifiable. It's like you follow a diet or you don't. You eat the foods or you don't. There's a yes and no element to it. Same with the cycle. You take the dose or you don't.
Yeah.
But with training, it's very subjective.
Yeah.
You know, you do the reps, you do the sets. Yeah, but did you do it to your greatest capability? Did you give everything you had at that point? And even if you were giving maximum effort, were you directing that effort into the muscle rather than just into effort of moving away? And so it's so subjective, it becomes very difficult to quantify. Whereas, and it's, I mean, this is the one area where we're coaching, I get frustrated and I struggle, because it's like trying to convey the level of effort you're trying to get out of a client without physically being able to go hands-on with them can sometimes be incredibly difficult and frustrating. And it's nobody's fault. It's not like it's the client's fault. It's just their perception of hard training is based on their experience of hard training.
Yeah, I work with a guy. So a lot of times what I do is I have people send me video, and we can build that intensity up through that. But sometimes it's like, man, I just think it would be better to train with somebody in the gym. And I was lucky enough that one of my guys that I've worked with, I'd worked through him all through his years of competing, and now he's a little bit older and retired from that, but still a young guy. Moved down to I think it's South Carolina, and turns out he trains at the same gym as Dusty. And he needed to he was just kind of like pumping these. It was like a pump workout is what it looked like, where like everything like doing a dumbbell row, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, then do the other side, you know. And like, you don't even look like you're sweating, man, you know, but he's getting a good pump. Anyway, I had him train with Dusty, and that light bulb turned on after that, and it's changed everything. But yeah, you make a good point. So I guess back on topic, so we covered Test, we covered Tren, we covered Deca. How about Equipoise?
Now, historically, they used to be the old, if you're not doing 600 milligram, don't bother with it.
Yep.
But I think now, I actually think we're in a similar ballpark with sort of Deca and testing. It's sort of 250, 300. I would probably lean more towards 300 with EQ.
Yeah, a little bit more for me than Deca. If you know, like I could even see 200 with Deca. With that 300 test, of course, you know, I'm looking at all these compounds. I'm assuming we have a test base.
I would say EQ is going to be slightly on the higher side in comparison, but yeah, I think 300. I think a nice start spot for EQ for a lot of people is around 4. But I think if we're looking at minimum doses where we're going to see any real progress, I would say 300.
Yeah, 300. I'd go with that. Do we want to get into the more exotics, or let's just go to maybe like the most popular compounds out there now?
We've got that's Mast and Primo, isn't there?
That's what I was going to go to. So any difference between Mast and Primo first? That would be one question. Or would you say they'd be about the same?
Higher.
Okay.
If you're looking at anabolic progression, right, I would run higher. The only caveat with that is how low Primo is going to push your estrogen.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
So, and I would say probably about 100 milligram, more on the Primo as opposed to the Mast. I think Mast can be effective at around 250, whereas Primo I'd be looking at 3, maybe a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, when I see Mast at 250, I see a cosmetic hardness out of it versus it being a mass builder so much. You know, if we take somebody who, say, is on TRT at 150 test and then we go to 250 test, 250 Primo, they're going to retain, if not grow, in that cycle. But mainly what we're going to see is a compositional shift to being more, you know, grainy and hard if we're dieting and getting leaner, you know?
Yeah, but I would definitely say Mast can be run lower than Primo, and Primo needs to be run higher.
Okay, so keeping it to just our basics then, I think that covers the basic injectables that people use. We're not getting into the Ment or your DHB, but what about the orals then? Oxhe.
At least 200 a day.
200 a day. 200 a day. I'm with you.
25. 30. Yeah, 25, somewhere there, 20, 30, 20, 25, 30, yeah.
Yep, I'm with you on that. 25 a day of Anadrol and I think that your 25 Anadrol per day might even do more than some of these low dose injectables. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a deceptive drug, is Anadrol. It definitely works. I mean, it has some unfortunate sides, particularly on the appetite front.
True.
And that's probably its biggest downfall, as far as I'm concerned, is the fact there's no point being on drugs if you can't eat.
Now, once again,
It
too,
just defeats the object, doesn't it?
Yeah. And as we get into these orals, I want to remind everybody, we're not just talking about getting a better pump in the gym, or getting an enhanced performance benefit, because I bet you that you could even get an enhanced performance benefit from like 10 Anadrol. You know what I mean? You probably noticed that. But I don't know if that's going to necessarily grow new tissue. How about Tbol?
I would normally say 20 to 30, probably leaning towards the 30 at modern day, but I do know that the original sort of farmer stuff, you could get away with less, particularly if it was your first exposure to it.
Yeah.
And I know you personally had very good results with very low dosings.
I'd say 20.
No.
What would you say, though?
I'd say 20 to 30. No, I'd say possibly a little bit more.
Okay. I even feel like slightly. 30 is 30 to me. We're getting up into like quote unquote real doses. In fact, I'd even say 25 a day for 8 weeks as part of your cycle would be you'd notice some major stuff out of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Who are you talking to, Dave?
Sorry, I'm having to deal with an emergency in a booking. Done.
For a booking? For your for labs?
Yeah, it just popped up. No, but yeah, I the other thing is, are we using Tbol as a secondary compound? Are we using it as a standalone? Are we doing oral only?
Oh, good point. I'm going to assume we have a test base for all of these cycles. We'll say, whatever we need what did we say, 250, 300 on tests. So we've got 300 tests in there.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll go with 20 personally. You say 25, 30. I think that either of them are going to be reasonable. So we've got those two. And then let's just go to the last ones. Let's make the last two Winstrol and Anavar.
We're not doing Tbol.
Oh, we can do Tbol? I didn't think anybody really used it.
No, and I don't know why people hate on Tbol. I think it's an excellent compound.
I think it's not as available right now. Like I know that I say that and guys are going to comment and be like, my source has Tbol, but I don't see it on a lot of lists nowadays.
No, I agree, and I think it's not available because it's not popular. But I don't understand why it's not. There's not a drive for it to be more popular because I really like it as an oral. Anyway,
yeah.
Anavar, I think to be honest, I think we're fairly similar across the board here. We're gonna be sort of 20-30 milligrams. For Anavar, Winstrol the same. I think Winstrol 25.
Yeah.
And Tbol again. I mean, these German stuff. Some of their dosing was actually quite low, like 5 and 10 milligrams of Tbol a day, and they were seeing significant performance. This is performance improvements, granted not muscle mass, but they were seeing significant performance improvements from it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I could see that because I could see the same from Anavar, 5-10 milligrams of Anavar to enhance your performance, especially for a guy who's like on nothing. Let's say you take nothing and then we put 5 or 10 Anavar in there. I think that you would notice that in the gym. How is that going to translate to 8 weeks down the road? Like how much real muscle did you gain out of it? I think that you would be hard pressed to have a huge transformation. But hey,
yeah, there is.
The better shape the better you train, like you said, the better the diet. Maybe you're going to get a little.
There is a difference from a dosing from a point of view of you'll get performance increases on much lower doses than you will on muscular growth. You do need a little bit more for the muscular growth, without doubt.
Yeah. In the research that Scott Stevenson was looking at, like for Anavar, for instance, it was the optimal like peak high end dosing was at 40 to 60 milligrams. That's where they saw like the most anabolic growth from it,
That's usually where I stick it, to be honest, somewhere between 40 and 60.
Yeah.
I've done higher personally, but with clients I tend to stick around that mark.
What'd you go to? 100?
100, but I did 100 Anavar and 100 Oxy combined.
Ooh, your liver was probably angry at you for a little while.
I tell you what, the fucking pumps. were insane.
Yeah.
To the point where I couldn't train properly. Insane.
I could see doing that. You know what, man? What about this? What if you combined like 25 VAR with 25 Oxy? I feel like even that would be, and you're getting 50 milligram total, right? Of oral.
It was one of my many experiments, but I ran 100 of each. I lasted 10, 14 days, and it wasn't for any side effects. It was, I'd start training, I'd pump up so much, I could hardly bloody move.
Yeah.
And it was particularly arms. Arms were terrible. The bicep range, I mean, I was capping out at 90-degree bend, and I couldn't go any further up because the pumps were just so massive. It was like, this is pointless. I'm not doing anything here, so I just knocked it on the head.
Yeah, well, it's harder to get a good pump when you have all that synth oil in your arms too,
Yeah, it's true, yeah.
We had somebody who commented on the stream, or on the stream, on the show last episode, and they said, synth oil, that guy's got synth oil in his arms. And Dave commented back, he said, it's not synth oil, it's Photoshop.
It doesn't bother me. If people think I put synth in my arms, I take it as a compliment, because what they're saying is I couldn't achieve that size without doing that. So it doesn't bother me. Yeah. It used to. I used to get wound up by it, but these days I just find it. Yeah, I used to. Yeah,
Do you ever attack people on the internet, go after people publicly and stuff?
A long time ago, I was a right dick. Yeah.
I can picture it now, man.
I used to get fucking triggered all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the internet, innit? I don't mind being called out on things that I've done that are wrong if I've done them wrong. You know what I mean? Fine, I did. All right, good, whatever. I used to get really wound up when I hadn't actually done it, and it was like, no, I haven't fucking done this. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And then people are probably like, oh, he's getting all defensive because he knows he's wrong.
Yeah. But people, even if they didn't set out to be a troll, they become a troll when they know you're reacting. You know what I mean? And it was, it's. So I walked away from that a long time ago. Even now, I'll make the odd. I don't comment much on posts anymore, but I'll make the odd comment, and 9 times out of 10 it blows back in my face, and I'm just thinking, why have I bothered?
Yeah.
For some reason, I just trigger people, so it's like, you know what? I mean, it's probably me and the way I put things, but it's like, you know what? I'm just not saying anything anymore.
Yeah, it's probably the safer bet. But we are happy to have you, Dave, whenever you comment. Dave went through and commented on the show the last episode.
We all know that creatine is great for muscle building, but were you aware of its benefits for brain health?
I think it's pronounced Cre-a-Teen.
No, it's definitely pronounced creatine.
No, it's definitely Cre-a-Teen. I'm positive of it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I said. Creatine.
Creatine?
Well, regardless of what you want to call it, creatine plays an important role in brain health. Research demonstrates that your brain needs a significant amount of ATP to perform difficult tasks. Supplementing with creatine will improve phosphocreatine stores, helping your brain produce more ATP. So if you're not on creatine now, give it a try. Check out TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there. They got all your basic health supplements like creatine, protein powder, everything else you can think of. Use our code THINK to help support our programming, get some additional savings, and get a great supplement. Yeah, it's definitely creatine.
All right, so we do have a bunch of listener questions, and as always, guys, you guys do a freaking great job loading us up with questions and topics and all that stuff. It helps to boost our programming in the algorithm, so thank you for that, and load us up with questions again for the next show. So we have some stuff from Patreon. We have some stuff from YouTube. All right, here we go. How about this one from Nick? He says, would love to see an AI when to start. Because we did a topic on a previous episode of when you come off cycle, when do you stop your AI? So he said, I'd love to see a topic of AIs when to start. The flip side of the question that was asked today. There seems to be an overwhelming amount of guys ready to toss in an AI when E2 is high, but no symptoms are present.
I think the only estrogen symptom I generally get concerned about is gyno. because it's the only one that's difficult to deal with. Water retention, you drop your estrogen, water retention is going to come down.
Yeah.
Sexual dysfunction, though not particularly pleasant when it occurs, at the end of the day, you bring your estrogen down, it's going to get back to normal. The only one that's going to have a lasting effect is gyno. So as a result, I tend to run Novadex in the early days, sort of off the bat.
Yeah.
And then I like to test estrogen about week 5. We're not going to be at peak estrogen levels, but we're going to be close enough to know sort of where we need to be. And only if I know someone has a history of problems with estrogen, or we're running quite a decent setup from an aromatizing drug, will I sort of plan estrogen management earlier on. Generally, you're looking at 2-3 weeks before you sort of see estrogen start to really increase, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And then it's going to peak about a week, 10 days behind your aromatizing drug peak. So, do you need to run an AI if you're non-symptomatic? No, not particularly. As long as you're covering all symptom bases, your blood pressure's okay and everything else, then no, I don't see any issue why you would need to run an AI if you're not experiencing negatives from the estrogen. I'd leave it well alone if you want. I mean, estrogen has its positives. It supports healthy lipids, so it's not all doom and gloom, isn't estrogen? It's just we want to manage those effects that we don't want from it, which is the water retention, increased blood pressure, erectile issues, and obviously the real big one, which is the gyno.
Yeah, I had a guy reach out to me, Dave. And, I'll mention this, too. It's going to depend on the cycle as well, right? Like, if you're going to start a gram a test, then there's going to be a much more highly likelihood that you're going to have issues, or something that is going to be high aromatizing, like Tbol, for instance.
Or men, something like that,
Yeah, you're going to, versus, if you're doing one of these low-dose cycles like we introed the show with, the likelihood of you needing an AI is going to be a lot lower. The more test, the more conversion, the more potential issues. I had a guy that I've worked with on and off reach out to me over the weekend, Dave, and he's been on TRT. He needed TRT, and he's doing it himself, okay? He's off doing his own thing, not working with me, and he had talked to a clinic, and I think that maybe he had been getting stuff from a clinic for a while. The clinic told him, hey, we don't do AIs at all for anything under 250 test. And there's no need. And we've heard that before. Like, you're not going to have enough estrogen to have a problem. Yet he says, I'm getting this itchiness and this sensitivity, which turned into pain, and I got a lump in my nipple. But they told me not to take. You didn't need an AI at anything under 250. I think he's taken 200. And needless to say, now he has this permanent lump because of the dogma of anti-AI. I think there's a middle ground. You know what I'm saying? There's a middle ground in there that AIs aren't all bad,
I think there's a combination of treating the symptoms and treating the numbers, and people tend to go one way or the other. I know people, particularly with higher levels of body fat, that even on correct TRT doses have high estrogen. Now, we might look at lesser estrogen management with things like DIM or Proviron, rather than going down the ADEX or aromasin route. But we're still going to look at some form of estrogen management, particularly if it's creating problems. But yeah, it's. I think it's important that you physically check, so you get the numbers. Mm-hmm. And it's also important that you listen to how you feel. And over time, you'll start to get an idea of, when I feel like this is where my numbers are. Mm-hmm. So you then start to, that, right, okay, I'm starting to feel that. That usually means estrogen's somewhere around here. So I know if I take X, Y, Z, I should sort of come down to where I need to be, because this is what I've experienced in the past. Yeah. And so testing becomes less crucial the more you learn to relate to what's going on in your blood work, to what's going on in what you're experiencing. But I think sometimes people treat the blood work when it's not necessary.
Yeah.
I've got an elevated estrogen level, but I feel brand new. Mm-hmm. And vice versa. People sometimes ignore things when they should be looking at it as well.
I agree with you 100%. Looking at the screen here, let's see. Can you talk about ways to lower prolactin?
there's a few ways. A lot of it depends on how the prolactin's being driven up. So, prolactin elevates with stress, and you will get a mild elevation, or you can get a mild elevation in prolactin just from being on anabolics. No other reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get a slightly increase in stress. So, if you're seeing prolactin just above range, chances are that's purely just down to anabolics. That isn't going to be significantly impacting on you in the way you feel or the way you perform. So generally, I wouldn't give a shit about it. The other thing that will drive prolactin up is elevated estrogen, and elevated estrogen that subsequently drops. And one of the reasons for that is there's some mechanism within our hormones that are very female-driven. When we first are in the womb, we are effectively females till we get that testosterone hit at week 6, 8, or whatever it is. Hence why males have nipples. So, if you get an elevation in estrogen and then a subsequent drop, so effectively you start a cycle, you get high estrogen sides, oh fuck, my estrogen's really high, you're slamming some Adex, your estrogen comes right down, that's going to trigger a rise in prolactin.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because it's part of the process of what happens within females and childbirth. They get an estrogen bloom that all of a sudden drops off, triggers the rise in prolactin and the starting of lactation. So it's not as significant in a male, but that mechanism still has some play. Okay. So there's also being aware of what preceded where your levels are. But again, that prolactin's not going to be significantly impacting. Now, with prolactin that's come from estrogen or come from stress, P5P generally will be very effective. And what it does, P5P increases the dopamine transport proteins. As a result, you carry more dopamine across the synapses to the receptor. As a result, engagement of the dopamine receptor is increased, and that pushes prolactin down. CABA works in the same effective way, but what CABA does is plug into the receptor and make the brain think there's more dopamine there than there really is. When you get elevated prolactin from Anadrol, so Tren or Deca, that's because it actually lowers the number of dopamine transport proteins. So you're still producing the same amount of dopamine, but it can't get carried to the receptor. So effectively, the brain thinks dopamine is low, and as a result, prolactin elevates. That's going to be significantly more impacting on you from a point of view of side effects. So that's the one that causes the lactation. That's the one that causes the erectile issues and all those sort of lovely things that come with it. Now, what I have found is that if you know you're going on a cycle with an androlone, if you start P5P for a couple of weeks before, you elevate the number of transport proteins, the androlone comes on and reduces that number of transport proteins. But because you've elevated them in the first place, the offset is that generally there's enough transport proteins to carry the dopamine across, and the prolactin issues are nowhere near as severe. But if you try and lower prolactin issues with P5P that have been induced by an androlone in the first place, the transport proteins are already low and the P5P just can't bring it up enough. And generally in that scenario, you're going to have to use CABA.
Yeah.
And that's what I've sort of seen.
I think that's a great explanation, man. We had a question or a topic, I guess. I'll just read this. Good show as always. Many still say that Masteron lowers estrogen. And I know I've heard Dave say that it acts as a SERM because of what he's seen on blood tests with clients. By happenstance, I came across an article from a European journal on cancer from 1965. It states that Masteron probe was found to compete with the androgen binding sites, but not estrogen receptors from the studies. My question is, has either of you heard or seen of this study, and what are your thoughts on it? Thanks.
There's a strong possibility that, seeing as that's a study from 1965, that researchers, well, I know it has progressed onwards. Now, Masteron, drostanolone, was used in the treatment for breast cancer for several reasons. One of the reasons was that it engages with the estrogen receptor in breast tissue, therefore reducing the effect of estrogen at the ER in breast tissue and reducing the proliferation of breast cancer cells. The other thing it does is the AR and the ER are both contained within the same cell. When the AR is engaged by Masteron, the downstream pathways are common to both. If one's occupied by AR production, the ER can't work as effectively. So that's the other mechanism. But there is also a metabolite from Masteron that is anti-estrogenic. Now, Steve covered this with a guy that was doing research, and this started the whole... Yes. And I tried to find a video, but for some reason I couldn't find it. But I have watched the video because Steve was saying how he saw, when he used Masteron, his estrogen levels lower. And the guy who was doing the research, he was a doctor, and he was like, what we've seen is there's a metabolite that acts like a SERM. So there is quite a lot of studies. In fact, I did dig some up showing Masteron acting as a SERM at breast tissue. So there was one 2024 which showed that Masteron was very equivalent to tamoxifen.
Really?
In ER blocking in the breast. Now, Masteron was supplanted in breast cancer treatment by tamoxifen and Clomid. So Masteron was used prior to the development of tamoxifen. And then as tamoxifen came along, it's slightly more efficient, and they switched over to that. So that was 2024. There was another trial in 2024 using CR1447, which is a Masteron derivative. It's a topical used to rub on breast, showing that it reduced ER engagement in breast tissue. Most of these are cancer stuff, but they're all showing the same ER. There was steroid receptor and drug response in breast cancer models from 2025. Again, showed that drostanolone analogs had an inhibitory effect comparable to tamoxifen.
Okay, interesting.
In both, now this is the interesting bit, in both ER and PR. So that was showing that drostanolone has an impact on progesterone receptors as well.
Interesting. Okay.
And I could go on because there's quite a few, but the basic issue is there is a lot of cancer research showing that drost has an ER blocking effect at the breast. Some are showing a bit of a PR blocking, and like I said, now if anyone finds that video, I'm sure that Steve said he listed the studies in the bio that were looking at this metabolite that had this anti-estrogenic effect.
I'll tell you what, if you find that video, post it in the comments, and that way everybody else can go over and see Steve's video on it.
It was someone from the show that put me onto it. It was someone that threw the link up in the show in a previous episode that put me onto it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit there. So I did my homework for you for that one.
That was good. That was really good, Dave.
Thank you.
We have a bunch more. How about this one? This is from the stream again. Steven, he said, I started Tren last night at 30 milligrams. Woke up in the middle of the night and had a panic attack. I've run Tren previously, no problems. And am I overthinking? Which in turn caused my panic?
Could easily be both, or a combination of both. It could be. With anxiety and overthinking, the nature of that happening can be very much self-manifesting. So you go on Tren, you expect Tren to do certain things, make you overthink. So you end up overthinking about Tren because you're so. Could it be psychosomatic to an extent? Yeah, very, very possibly. If he's only just started, I would be surprised if the trainer had such a significant impact early on, but it's not impossible.
Especially at that dose, 30 milligrams, I can tell you that when I had been in contest prep, I did find that while already on Tren, while already having it, in my system, if I were to take a shot at night before bed, that it did seem to keep me more like up, you know what I mean? And I guess, though, you look at it and that androgens are going to be like central nervous system stimulators. So there is that effect, you know.
There's that effect. You'll get some immediate cleaving from the injection as well, so you're going to get some pure hormone entering the bloodstream. And I mean, obviously, once it's in the bloodstream, it's around the body in literally seconds.
David Graham's comment, he said, pleased to have had a hand in connecting Dave and his wife with pudding. Glad to see that he's doing well with them.
Okay. Yeah, you can have him back. He's a pain in the arse.
And another nice comment here from Northern. He says, Dave has had so much juice over the years. We should call him the man from Del Monte.
I like that. I saw that comment. That made me chuckle. That made me really chuckle.
It was a good
one. The man
one.
from Del Monte, he said yes.
Good show as always. Oh, here was the Masteron question. Question for you both. If I wanted to use Test Sip, Deca, and EQ for a strength and bulking cycle, how much of each would you use weekly? And what would be a great way to get the best gains out of this cycle? Thank you both. I guess it depends too. Like, what's his experience? Is this guy like just a TRT guy all his life? Because I'm not going to tell him to run a gram of test and 600 Deca and 400 EQ.
There you go. There's your cycle, mate. Crack on.
Yeah.
Training would be a good idea. That will get the most out of the cycle.
Yeah.
Surprisingly.
I do have people, Dave, that reach out to me like that I'm coaching, and they say, "Hey, is there anything more that I can do? And what they're like, any supplements I should be taking, or anything I can change around?" And I'm telling them always, like, once we have things in a good groove, the number one thing you can do is get the most out of your training.
I think it's a natural process. I think I've gone through it. I'm sure you've gone through it, where you start going, "What else can I take?"
Sure.
And, in Scott cases, he opens his shoebox and has a look and see what has he got. What can I play with?
Got about 14 mils of Tren. All right, we'll make this work.
Stick that in for this. But in his recipe box. But I think we all go through that. More is better sort of phase of approach and look for. Excuse me. What else can I do? What can I add to this to make it better? And unfortunately, we'll go back to cake making, because the recipe, sometimes you add too much and you ruin the cake.
Yeah.
And it's the same with gear. More is not always going to be better. If it makes you more toxic, overstresses you, you're going to find you're in a negative position rather than a positive. So going back to the cycle, I'm tempted to go 400, 400, 400.
Yeah.
Depending on experience. If I was to go higher, I'd go higher on the Deca or the test. I wouldn't go higher on the EQ, personally.
Okay. I think for me, it depends on maybe the experience we've had. So I work with a guy who has had really good experience with Deca. So we know that Deca is a good compound for him. We did an experiment previous off season where he ran, I believe it was around, might have been 900 tests. The guy's an advanced lifter too. The guy's an IPB pro. 900 tests. I believe it was 600 or 700 Deca, along with 300 EQ, and that worked great for him. We're actually doing that. We did that cycle again, a second time. Worked great again. For myself, I'm more of an EQ guy. I found that my best ever cycle was test at about, and this is when I was dosing stuff higher, it was like 1.25 grams a test, 800 EQ, and then the NPP, I didn't use Deca, I used NPP, still Nandrolone. I did that at 200 to 300 per week, and I loved that cycle. Great for me, but I learned what worked for me first by having experimented with all these compounds individually. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I've had clients push test at 300 and Deca at 900 and had amazing cycles, and I've had clients that have put 300 Deca in and turned into a depressive emotional wreck.
Yeah.
So there is a tolerance thing there as well, definitely.
Yeah. So I guess it depends on the individual, but I could see what you're saying. Would you say 400 of each?
Going blind with no background knowledge, yeah. I'd say that's not a bad start.
All right.
And at the end of the day, it's 1.2 total, which is a decent crack for most people.
True. All right, what else do we have here? All right, and once again, just a reminder, guys, if you haven't hit the like button, please do. I compete in a little less than 5 weeks, and then I'm coming off everything and just going back to TRT levels of 125 per week, and perhaps completely off if I cycle back on after 8 weeks of what would my receptors be fresh, or should I go a little longer?
Your receptors are dead after a day.
But you get new ones, right?
You do get new. So I think we've done this, but very quick drug lesson. Testosterone in your bloodstream enters the cell. Well, any androgen, to be fair, enters the cell, connects to the AR, creates the complete package, travels down to the nucleus, tells it to do all the wonderful things, increases contractile proteins, increases nitrogen, anti-catabolic, all the rest of it. And then it comes out of the nucleus, it leaves the androgen receptor and then re-enters the bloodstream. And it will continue to do things until it dies off. When it separates from the androgen receptor divides into two. So you do not desensitize androgen receptors because they are constantly increasing and dying off, etc., etc. And androgen receptors, basically, it's a constant cycle of new ones being produced, old ones dying off, but the engagement of the androgen receptor causes them to duplicate. And then that molecule of androgen might then get attached to aromatase and convert to estrogen, depending on what compound it is, or it might attach to 5-AR and become a DHT if it's not already a DHT, or it might bind to SHBG and go from your arse to your shoulder, or albumin and go from your shoulder to your toe, and then convert or then engage with another AR, and it will continue doing this till it dies. Yeah. So the bloodstream is this melting plot of androgens engaging with various things, be it receptors or transport proteins or 5-AR or aromatase, and then estrogen engaging with receptors or transport proteins and being moved around the body. So it's this constant melting pot of things going on all the time, things dying off, things being renewed. Androgen receptors do not desensitize, they do not downregulate. In that sense, they will downregulate once androgens have left the system, because as they die off, they're not going to be replaced on a duplication. But that takes a little bit of time, it's downstream where you start to get elevated stress levels that can be counterproductive. So, though you don't need any time for your androgen receptors to recover, you do need time for your downstream effects to recover. Generally speaking, when you stop the cycle, you want a period of no drugs to allow circulating hormone levels to drop. Then you start your TRT. If you go into TRT straight away, and we've covered this a few times, but I'll go through it again. Let's say we're at 100 mmol, and every week, in line with the half-life of the drugs you use, it drops by 20 mmol. But you start your TRT straight away. So you go 100, down to 80, re-inject, back up to 90. Down to 70, re-inject, back up to 80. That extends your decline quite significantly. And even 6-7 weeks down the line, you can still be above levels. Yeah. Which means you're still driving hemoglobin up, you're still pushing HDL down, and you're still creating downstream stress. So stop, levels drop, then TRT. That allows the body to recover. The healthier you are going into the next cycle, the better you'll respond, and the better you'll tolerate the drugs. So that's an individual thing, but I would say as long as you've got levels down quick enough, 8-10 weeks bridge time is usually enough for most people. But longer's not going to be a negative thing. It only means that you're going to be fresher going into the next cycle.
Yeah, generally I'll ideally we're doing a rebound post contest. So we don't need to add a bunch of gear in to make the most out of that. You know, you're in a great, super insulin sensitive place. You can also get real fat real easily too. But we're building that diet out. And, you know, also too, you maybe even need a little bit of a break post contest of training if you really hit it hard. But I wouldn't take that until after a month, you know. But besides that, yeah, I'm working on rebounding you, filling you back up. And eventually we hit a point where you kind of top off. And if we can make that extend like 8 weeks, even a little bit longer, and then add the gear in, then we can just keep going back up. Maybe you were, you know, I work with a guy that we were 200 pounds for the contest. By the time that we actually got back onto the next cycle, he was already 230s, and now we've pushed up into the 250s, you know. So, you know, take advantage of that. A couple more here. How about this one? David says, simple question. So he's running a test Deca cycle. If you were to use Anavar with that, would you do 25 a day for 12 weeks or 50 a day for 6 weeks?
Personally, I'd go 50 a day for 6 weeks, last 6 weeks. That would be my approach.
Yeah, I could go with that. That worked for me. That was Patreon question. Thanks, David, for your support. And do you guys ever see deficiency in iodine? Do you use iodized salt or Himalayan sea salt?
It's not something I've ever seen, but it's not something that we test for in our bloods anyway, so it's not something I'm generally going to see. But I've always used either sea salt or Himalayan than anything else.
Iodine you have to be careful with too, you know, especially if you have any kind of thyroid stuff going on.
I was going to just about to say, yeah, thyroid is dodgy as hell as well.
Yeah. I remember, dude, a guy who was selling research chems years ago. This is like 2005, long time ago in research chem days. And they had people that were saying, yeah, I think this T3 is bunk. I'm not getting anything out of it. And he said, oh, you got to take iodine with it. Take a lot of iodine and it'll work. You're not getting enough iodine in. So he wanted you to megadose iodine while you're taking his T3. Yeah, I don't know about that.
No, I mean, I know underactive thyroid sufferers have to be very careful around cruciate vegetables for that same reason. It's not good for your thyroid.
Yeah. We had a bunch of other comments here. We'll just kind of skim through these really quick. Do you ever use, like the oral test, the undecanoate capsules? You ever take those?
Nope.
No, I haven't either.
Never even seen them.
No? Never even seen them, but you're aware of them, right?
No, yeah, I know they exist. I just never seen them.
Yeah. Gamboni's with us, Gamboni Law. Make it really quick. Full body split just harder. Is a full body split just harder and less effective? Doing most compounds 3 times week seems more challenging, even if it's 3 to 4 exercises. Isn't it better for body comp too?
I think personally that the problem with a full body workout is because you're repeating it several times a week, you're quite limited on the volume you can do with each session, which means the intensity has to be high and people struggle generating that level of intensity, where a bro split allows more volume, which will compensate for the intensity not quite being there. At the end of the day, you can train intensely or you can train longer. You can't do both. And the nature of brief workouts, or effectively high-intensity workouts, means that the intensity has to be high to make them effective. Overall, doing compounds 3 days a week shouldn't be too taxing. I mean, CrossFit fuckers do it every bloody day. They deadlift and squat every time they train. So, it's viable. But yeah, I would say the issue is around to how much intensity you can generate, which is why full body workouts sometimes are not seen as being as productive as a blow split unless you can train very intensely.
Yeah.
But you can still grow off them. I mean, it's something Jordan Peters does quite a bit of is body splits, and full body or half body splits, like 2-day splits.
Well, look at fortitude training is a full body workout. So it's going to be like maybe you're going to hit upper really hard, and then lower body is going to be more like a pump workout. And then next time it's going to be, lower is really hard and upper body is a pump workout. So, but you are getting that activation in, full body.
And that feeds into almost like the feeder set approach, where you do an intense workout, then you back it up with a more volume blood flow workout to increase nutritional transit within the muscle and everything else. Yeah. So maybe if you're struggling with it, try that approach where you do certain exercises intensely, and then the following workout you do other exercises intensely and more voluminous on the exercises that you previously trained intensely.
Yeah. Somebody said on the Tren, don't take it at night either, morning injections. I'm with that, I'm definitely a fan of doing an earlier injection of Tren versus right before bed. Dave, we had one more important segment for the show today that we always need to get to. It's the most, by some people, they might even say it's the most important segment of the show. It's called...
Well, you're going to want Uncle Dave's advice, aren't you? And I've got nothing.
Why?
Because I'm very poorly prepared, and I was doing my Masteron research and forgot about it.
Oh, but this is like your life reflections, though, where you have your whole life to prepare for this, Could it be something about how even if your best friend lives all the way across the ocean, it doesn't mean that you care about him even any less, even though you're so
No, I just
far
don't
away?
care about him. There you go. Just keep swimming. We haven't had that in ages, so don't start.
Just keep swimming, guys. Just like Dory. Is that her name? Dory?
Yeah, Dory.
It's okay. What about
I don't know if I've done this. I don't know if it's. I probably have, because you do run out of shit. You know what I mean? But there is going to be points in your life where you're only going to get through it by repetition, by just getting up, doing what you've got to do, and getting through the day. You are not going to be positive. You are not going to enjoy life. You're not going to enjoy work, and it's going to feel like a slog through mud. To quote Tom Hanks, it is temporary. But it won't be temporary if you don't get up, get on with it, and get through it. Because by not getting up and getting on with it, you're going to create secondary problems that are going to bite you on the arse later down the line.
Yeah.
So, life sometimes can be shit.
You got a Tom Hanks quote push. I
saw a video of him saying that he had, what he said was basically, bad times, they won't last.
Yep.
Good times, they won't last.
Yeah.
It will change. And you've just got to roll with it. And sometimes routine and repetition is all you've got to get you through. You just get up, you do the shit, you carry on doing the shit, because it's what needs to be done. When you start lacking in your responsibilities because you don't feel like it, that's gonna create an ongoing problem later on down the line.
Yeah, I could see that. I remember my dad hadn't given me like a lot of wisdom advice when I was a kid. But I remember dealing with this situation as a teenager and him telling me, Scott, and he gave me that kind of like, dad advice that you would expect. Dad give you deep advice. He said, Scott, you realize after a while that things aren't really ever as bad as you think they are. But they're also not as good as you think they are either.
Yeah, I mean, if you're reflective, there will be times in your life, I suspect for pretty much everybody, where you've sat there and gone, how the fuck am I going to get through this?
Yeah.
And yet, you're through it.
Yeah.
Or you wouldn't be sat here now. So you've obviously got through. You might be in that position now where it's just like, how the shit am I going to get through this crap?
And we all, literally all of us have definitely been there where we can't understand how it's going to get, how we're going to be able to do it.
I remember going to prison, sitting in that cell in that first week, and one, just thinking, how has my life come to this?
Ooh.
But two, also just thinking, how am I going to how am I ever going to get anywhere? My life's over. I've ruined it. I've destroyed it. And ironically, prison was the best thing that could happen to me because it gave me time to sort of really reflect and sort my shit out. I mean, all right, it meant restarting life in my 40s, which probably wasn't ideal, but at the same time, anything's achievable with enough effort.
Yeah.
Even sometimes the worst scenarios, because you just keep plodding through, can create the best aftermath ever possible. But yeah, we've all been through shit where we've just thought, fuck, I can't cope with this, I can't deal with this, and yet we do. And it's just having faith in yourself and just, believe it or not, keep swimming.
Yeah, I like that. That's good, man. Yeah, I can imagine how that would have felt.
Got it in.
You did. I can imagine how that would have felt sitting there like a weekend and being like, holy crap, how did I get here?
Well, it's the thing is, it's prison actually in certain ways isn't that bad. Because your meals are there, your bed's there.
Yeah.
You don't have really any stress in your day-to-day life, but then the issues are outside, you have no control. So if there is a problem at home, you can't fix it. You can't do anything about it. And when you're locked in a room for 23 hours a day, your brain will start twisting that shit very, very quickly.
Were you literally locked in a room in a cell for 23 hours? Or
to start with, yes. And then as you get into the routine, you end up either going to education or going to work, and you start to get your gym time. But your initial incarceration, you get an hour's exercise, and the prison I was initially in was every third day you got an hour's free time as well, where you could go out on the wing and make phone calls and have a shower and stuff. The rest of that, 1 hour's exercise, go out and get your meals, go back to your cell, and that's all you ever did.
So you got a shower every 3 days, and that was it?
Yeah.
And you got to go out for 1 hour every 3 days, plus.
No, 1 hour a day. You got exercise
1 hour a
day. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
Probably the worst prison I was in was Toronto West 1.
That Toronto? Yeah. Is that in the U.S. before they?
Canada.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, that's what I meant. Before they flew you back out. So that's when they first snagged you.
Yeah.
I imagine you went to like a county first or something, right?
I went to Niagara Detention Center first.
Okay. And what's that? That sounds like a prison or a jail.
It sort of is, yes. So there's 2 levels to it. Because I was at that point an immigration case, then you go into sort of the general pop, which is basically a dormitory environment. So you're in with 30 other guys.
And that's everybody.
When I went to Toronto prior to deportation, I was in a cell with 3 guys on a wing with, I think it was 6 cells, so it's triangular shaped.
Yeah.
The long side has the showers and toilets, which are completely open. There's no doors or anything. And then you've got, I think it was 3 or 4 cells, entry door in this corner, entry door in that corner. That was, we'd get exercise daily. However, there was an excuse every day to bring us in early. So we'd be out 10 minutes, 15, every bloody day.
An excuse? Like something would go down wrong or something?
Yeah, there'll be something. One of the guards, he's done this wrong, or he's looking at that window in the wrong way, or he's walked incorrectly. There was always bullshit. Just an excuse to get us back in. And then your cell door got opened in the morning, and it was a barred door, so it was open to the wing. You could see through it. And you got that wing space, which wasn't large, all day. And then you got locked up again on the night. And that was the scenario. When it went to the UK system, initially it was 2 to a cell. And then as I progressed, I ended up with my own cell.
Okay.
But yeah, there was definitely dark times where I thought, life as I know it was over, sort of thing.
Why was Toronto so bad?
Just
because of
the officers were particularly antagonistic.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
So I was in a cell with a fat guy from Australia, New Zealand, who was caught up in some technicality, effectively. Mm-hmm. A Russian that liked killing coppers. And a young lad that had committed his first murder who was definitely not all there.
Okay.
So I sort of slept with one eye open.
You're like, hey, I'm just here for taxes. Can I get a different room? Can I get...
Well, I mean, any sort of attempt at communication of trying to get any sort of thing sorted was just pointless. The English system was a little bit more responsive, but not much. You know what I mean? I need to sort this out. Yeah, okay. 3 weeks later, you're still asking the same bloody questions.
Oh, yeah.
But once you get into what they call your sentence prison, which is the prison you're going to spend the bulk of your sentence at, then you start to be able to get enrolled in programs or get a job or do something that at least makes the day a little bit more productive.
And you got to do some painting and some drawing.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, when I was in Shorts. Shorts is a max security in Scotland.
And, guys, in case you didn't know, we haven't talked about this in a while.
It's on the floor. It's not even hung up. You know what I mean? This is how much he respects it.
I have it in my office. I have a bunch of pictures that I just kind of I put up against my wall like this, and I just look at them. Guys, did you know that Dave drew this? I mean, not this actual one, but this is a print of Dave's drawings. I mean, it's really incredible, man.
Technically, that's one of my better ones, I must admit.
I really like it. Yeah, it's cool. Do you still ever do prints for people?
Yeah, I do prints. I haven't drawn in a very long time.
Yeah.
Probably haven't drawn in 2 years, but I still do prints.
This is number 5 of a series of 500 prints. Dave signed it right there. You guys, I don't know if you can. Yeah, you can see that. Dave signed it. How would they reach out to you if they wanted to get your prints or if they wanted to reach out to you for coaching?
Just social media, usual.
All right. I'll have that link down below. And you got anything else coming up? Oh, your new app. Better You?
Yeah, betteryou.online has launched. Basically, it works out £1 a day. Okay. And it's basically a coaching app. Does your diet, does your training plans. There's no anabolic section to it, so you're not getting cycles. But for someone who wants, it's useful. It does things like you can put in what restaurant you're going to and it will scan the menus and fit a menu choice around the diet plan as best it can.
Okay.
Gives you shopping lists, so instead of having to go to the shop, you just get a shopping list. It's like, all right, I need to buy this, and this is the amounts I need for the week.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Heavily AI powered, but works really well, actually. Yeah. So, yeah, definitely sign up for that, everybody.
Nice. Are you doing your cardio?
Nice weather we've been having, It's been quite sunny here for a while.
Hey, I've been keeping up on my cardio, Dave. I'm doing a lot of cardio now, and I lost a lot of fat, and I want you to get back on board with me.
My diet's been good, but my cardio has been... I have had a lot of foot pain, but to be honest, that's the last 4 or 5 days it's gone, so I've had no excuses, but no. But my diet's been good. Good with my diet.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better too, guys, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, then please do. We have a lot of podcasts coming out. We'd love to have you along for all of them, and hit the bell. Leave us questions for the next episode. You guys are freaking awesome with all your comments and everything. And reach out to Dave on social media. I'll have the links to Dave down below, as well as reach out to me, McNallyDiets@gmail.com. You can follow me on social media too. I'll drop that in there. And guys, for another episode of the podcast brought to you by Strom Sports Nutrition, TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINK, SupplementSource.ca for Canadians, and of course, evalbloodanalysis.com. We got to your Patreon questions today. Leave us more Patreon questions for the next episode. And Dave, sorry that I'm, what was that word that guy called me? What did he call me?
Oh, see you next Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm kind of a see you next Tuesday is what somebody said about me. Okay, I guess I am.
That was funny.
Yeah, it's great.
Obviously, I agreed with him wholeheartedly.
Guys, we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.